What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to the next part of my 2026 season preview series, where today we're going to be talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, if you haven't seen one of these videos I've been doing, basically we're going to go through a review of the 2025 offense and defense, and then get into some additions and losses for both sides of the ball, as well as some storylines to look out for. And then finally, we'll take a look at the 2026 schedule, and then cap it off with a record prediction. Starting with the offense in 2025, last year was a solid year all around. We saw a pretty career year from guys like Parker Washington, and I think, Trevor Lawrence didn't have the most incredible statistical year, but almost 40 touchdowns between rushing and passing. All in all, offensively, they just were solid. They couldn't run the ball as well as many of the other playoff contenders, but I think in 2026, we're going to see more of a committee option in terms of how they're going to get those rushing yards. Obviously, Travis Etienne is no longer on this team, so they're not going to be able to account for their star player in the backfield. And like I said, they're going to be more of a committee role in that backfield. Now, not too many offensive additions to highlight in 2026 for this team. They do sign Chris Rodriguez on a 2-year deal, and they draft guys like Nate Borkerker in the second round and Emmanuel Pregnon in the third out of Oregon. Two guys who are probably going to be depth pieces at their respective positions. And obviously the big departure, which I already mentioned when looking at the offense from last year, Travis Etienne going to the New Orleans Saints. I hope I'm saying that correct because I already said Etienne to begin the video. Going to New Orleans on a 4-year, $48 million deal. And it probably is the best running back free agent that was available last year. And to be honest, if I'm in Jacksonville's shoes, I'm a little disappointed to see that it's $12 million a year to lose a guy who possibly could be going into his prime in 2026 and beyond. And if I'm the Jaguars, I don't feel great about just losing him for nothing. And the departure of Etienne is going to highlight my first storyline for this team. It's going to be Trevor Lawrence's first year playing without Travis Etienne since 2020. You're talking about almost a decade-long relationship that spanned back to Clemson. Those two guys did a lot of winning together, a lot of playing football together. They just were around each other. For 7 months of the year, they were around each other almost 24/7 probably. And so I really think it is going to affect Trevor Lawrence a lot, considering it's just a familiar face he's no longer going to have around him. And again, the first time since 2018 that he's not going to have him in the backfield with him. Is Brian Thomas Jr. going to have a bounce back year? Last year, with the addition of Travis Hunter and the emergence of Parker Washington, Brian Thomas kind of got forgotten, I guess. I don't think going into the year we forgot about Brian Thomas, but throughout the year we kind of forgot about him. So it's going to be important for him. If Travis Hunter is not going to be a guy that's playing every single down, which he shouldn't be if he's playing both offense and defense, it's going to be important for Brian Thomas to have a better year than last year. Get rid of the drops and just, have a better year. And what is 2026 going to be for Travis Hunter, and what will he be this year? Is he going to be a guy playing majority offense? Is he going to be a guy playing majority defense? Is he going to be 50-50 of both? Last year I think there were so many conversations about the plan, and then once he got injured, the plan got thrown out the window. And this year the hope is that, some of those conversations that we were hearing about how he's going to get used actually come to fruition. And the jury is still going to be out whether or not he was worth the very high draft selection from last year. If this is another year where there's not a lot of production, there's honestly going to be some thoughts in my mind about whether or not he's a bust. Defensively in 2025, this was one of the best teams in the entire NFL. Defensively, they had guys at every single level that really performed, and even though they didn't have anybody that just absolutely went crazy statistically, everybody that played and started for this defense played key roles. You look at guys like Devin Lloyd, who was a second-team All-Pro. You have somebody like Josh Hines-Allen, who with his 8 sacks last year became the all-time leader in Jacksonville Jaguars history in terms of sacks. Again, like the offense, not too many defensive additions to really highlight. Getting somebody like Dane Jackson to add to cornerback depth was, really good for this team. They trade for Atlanta defensive lineman Rook Ororo, which that's probably the hardest name to say in the NFL, and they traded away Mason Smith. It basically was a defensive lineman for a defensive lineman trade. And in the draft, again, not too many huge names added to this team. Albert Regis out of Texas A&M and Jalen Husky out of Maryland. Two more players, like I said, with the offense, probably going to be reserve/depth pieces for this team in 2026. And some more big losses for the defense in 2026. Devin Lloyd signing with the Carolina Panthers on a 3-year, $42 million deal. Greg Newsome, who this team traded for during the year, they traded away a cornerback on their own in that deal that sent Greg Newsome from Cleveland to Jacksonville. He signs with the Giants on a 1-year, $8 million deal. They also lose veteran Andrew Wingard on a 1-year deal to Arizona. Now, I really think that the loss of Devin Lloyd, it almost mirrors the loss of Travis Etienne to the New Orleans Saints. A 3-year, $42 million deal. It really felt like Devin Lloyd, after a somewhat bumpy begin to his career, he really was coming into his own as one of the best linebackers, not just for Jacksonville, but for the entire NFL. This was a guy who had 5 interceptions last year. He's always been a ball hawk since he took over as a starting linebacker for this team. And again, like I said with Travis Etienne, losing Devin Lloyd for literally nothing, I think it's going to hurt more than they realize. And that leads into my defensive storylines for this team. Can Ventrell Miller replace Devin Lloyd? He is going to be really the guy who, he's been with Jacksonville for a few years now, and he's played well in the sparing times that he's had to start or whenever he's had to play on defense. Can he be the everyday starter at linebacker that replaces Devin Lloyd? Trayvon Walker, is he going to have somewhat of a bounce back year? Now, I don't say that to say that Trayvon Walker had a bad year in 2025 at all. I think if you compare him to other edge defenders in the NFL, he is at least average, if not really above average. I think he's a good player, and last year he had a good season. But with him being a number 1 overall draft pick, I really think that Jacksonville wants more. They want to see more, and I think you should want to see more out of this guy. He obviously had a really productive college career, and he was very productive in his first couple of seasons. So again, I think it's important for him to, last year wasn't as good as I think Trayvon Walker can be. I look at him as one of the pieces that should step up if this team wants to make those, Super Bowl aspirations obtainable. Again, I'm going to highlight Travis Hunter for the defense because it's a somewhat loaded cornerback room. It's not loaded with the best players in the world, but they have guys, and Travis Hunter is one of those guys. If he's just a slot corner on third down, great. If he plays every single game on defense, great. But I really think defensively is where we're going to see Travis Hunter maybe stay, I think, more involved with between the two sides of the ball. Because I think it's easier to see value in a guy that is playing, 60 to 70% of snaps on defense than a guy that's playing 30 to 40% on both sides of the ball. It gives him more opportunities to get in on plays, possibly cause turnovers, or just big plays in general for this Jacksonville defense. This was not a team that got many, that was very good against the pass last year. And so having somebody like Travis Hunter who can help shut down opposing teams' wide receivers, that I think is more important to this team than him playing a major role on offense. A look at the schedule for the Jacksonville Jaguars in 2026. Some pretty tough games mixed in with their obviously tough divisional games. Getting Houston twice a year along with Tennessee and Indianapolis. I think Jacksonville, they're better than Tennessee and Indianapolis, and they match up pretty well with Houston. I think the other games that they're going to have to look out for, they go to Dallas late in the year, week 16, and they also go to Chicago a few weeks before that as well. Just some tough road games where I think they're going to get tested. You also have some games in Denver and Cincinnati mixed in there as well. So again, it's just going to be tough games for Jacksonville, but I don't think you look at the schedule and say, man, Jacksonville's overmatched in a lot of these games. I think they stack up well, even when you talk about teams like Houston or Philadelphia or New England or Denver. I think Jacksonville stacks up well. It's going to be up to them to actually perform that way once those games come. And so I think Jacksonville in 2026, this is at least a 10-win team. I think we're looking at a season, even though the offense lost Travis Etienne, whether it's somebody who got signed to this team like Chris Rodriguez, or whether it was somebody that got drafted last year like Bashal Tutin, or maybe it was an undrafted free agent like Jamari Taylor who had a great game in his first preseason snaps. I think once they get that part figured out, just who's going to be the guy, or if it's going to be a committee role, if it's going to be all three of those guys playing a role, I think just once they establish that, offensively they're set. Defensively, they're really good as well. The loss of Devin Lloyd, I think, is going to hurt, and I think in some matchups they're going to get exposed, but they're still probably a 10-win team. And if Trevor Lawrence can take that next step in his development as a quarterback and becoming the actual franchise quarterback that he was drafted to be, this team gets to 12 wins, I think, very easily. And, that might not seem like a great record. It's obviously really good. But I think, this is a team who should be hosting games in the playoffs. They should be up there with the teams like New England from last year. And I think they should really look at how that season played out for New England and them getting to the Super Bowl. Jacksonville has a way better quarterback. I mean, just looking at talent, Trevor Lawrence is more talented than Drake May. Trevor Lawrence is more talented than many other quarterbacks in the AFC. You probably would say he's top 5 in terms of talent in the AFC at quarterback position. So it's that next step where he actually is fulfilling that potential that could get this team to those Super Bowl aspirations. With that being said, that's going to be it for this video. Make sure you like and subscribe for more videos in the future, and I'll see you in the next one.